We now come to the story of the flood. Everybody knows the story. In fact, every culture has a story of a flood. Is this a fairy tale that cultures propagate? The Bible story is definitely not a fairy tale. Fairy tales are vague on details. They say once upon a time, long, long ago, far, far away, in such and such a never, never land. But the story of a flood gives specific details of the people, their genealogies, very specific dates, locations, everything detailed. Now, fairy tales don't give details. Now, why was Noah chosen? The Bible says in Genesis, he was a righteous man. In the midst of all this horrible evil, there was one righteous man. But in New Testament, it says something else about Noah. He is found in Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 is I would say, the heroes' hall of faith. All the men of faith are in this chapter. Noah is found in Hebrews 11:7. And it says, Noah, being warned of God of things not yet seen as yet. What does this mean? See, Noah was warned of God about a coming rain and flood. Now, Noah had never seen rain. Up to this point, as I said earlier, the world had water below, water canopy up there, this massive canopy of water up there, and the world was watered by this mist, like a hot house, beautiful, perfect growing environment. But the Bible tells us, God warned him, I'm going to bring rain and flood. And Noah probably said, what is rain? What is a flood? Right? So, yet when God told him to build the ark, he built it. That's faith. Never seen it. Told, just believed God. In the New Testament, it actually says, we all know Noah as a builder of an ark. But in the New Testament, it doesn't mention that at all. It says in 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 5, it says he was a preacher of righteousness. Wow! He's not known as a naval architect or a naval builder, but a preacher of righteousness. What was he doing during this time? Just building the ark? No. He was preaching to the people. You say, what do you mean? Imagine, Noah's building this massive thing. It takes a very long time. People actually don't know how to calculate how long it takes. It varies from 1 year to many years. Doesn't matter. It takes a long time to build an ark in those days. All right? Nobody had the equipment and the massive structure. And these people came and said, what are you doing, Noah? And Noah said, I'm preparing for God's judgment. What? What are you talking about? And then he preached to them that God would judge the world because of their evil. He was a preacher of righteousness. So basically, the ark was his pulpit. The ark was like I would say, an attraction to draw people. Can you imagine? It was like the Universal Studios or Disney of that time. Everybody said, have you been there? Have you seen this amazing structure? Everybody would come and see, what is this guy doing? And he just preached and preached. So it's probably the biggest pulpit, the longest sermon, all right, to the largest number of people in the world at that time. So here we have God warning the people. Long time to build this ark. And God used a preacher of righteousness. Okay? Now, there's several frequently asked questions, maybe about 5, about the ark. Number 1 is, how is it possible to flood the whole world with rain? 40 days of rain, okay? It rains 40 days, you can't cover the whole world, right? Well, the Bible explains that very, very plainly. it says that the windows of heaven were broken. This huge canopy was now released. The water was released like a dam, When you open a dam, the floodgate, the water comes out not like rain, but a flood of water. Except this time the flood doesn't come from a dam this way, it comes from heaven this way. So imagine God punctures the dam at different places, and water didn't come down by drops, it came down as a mass of water. Secondly, the Bible says the great fountains of the deep were broken up. We all know today there's a lot of water underground. Ask any farmer, he knows. No rain, deep wells will provide water. So there's a lot of water underground. In fact, scientists now say that subterranean water may be more than the water in the sea. So those were broken up too. So water comes out from here, water comes out from here, and literally covers the ground. Number one. Okay? Number two, how do you cover the whole earth? He said the whole earth was covered. You know how high Mount Everest is? 29,000 feet. I have studied that in geography. Well, the geologists believe the world was much flatter at that time, before the tectonic plates met each other and formed mountains and valleys. The world was more round and less ups and downs. And so literally the world was easily covered at that time. There were not high peaks and deep valleys. All right, so that's question number two. Now, how do you put so many animals in the ark? Well, the size is given very, very clearly. The size is stated very clearly: 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. So it's a box like that, shape of a box. People have calculated, using the cubit, using the measurement, that this size can hold 70,000 animals of average size. I will explain that later, what I mean by average size. Okay? But first, I want you to see the dimensions of this ark. It's very interesting. 300, 50 wide. 300 long, 50 wide. 6 times longer than the width. Most modern ships have the same dimension, unless they're specially built ships, right? Normal ships. 6 times longer in length than the width. Height, 300 long, 30 high. 10 times longer than the height. You can almost picture in your mind now. That's a modern naval architect's standard measurements for a boat, right? So imagine the other episodes of the flood. There are many stories of a flood. For example, the Babylonian story, the ark was a cube, a perfect cube. Imagine a cube in the water currents. It'll just spin round and round. You put a cube in the water, when there's a current, it just goes round and round. 150 days, the animals will be totally dizzy with vertigo, and so would Adam be, Noah be, all right? So obviously, the measurement was big enough for 70,000 animals. Now, next question. How come? Do you know how big Tyrannosaurus is? Or you say average size animal. Tyrannosaurus so big. Let me ask you another question. Do you know how small a baby Tyrannosaurus is? Why did Noah have to bring the giants in? You've seen dinosaur eggs? I've seen them in museums. They're big. When a dinosaur comes out, it's not that big. Right? The reason why dinosaurs grow that big, they live long. Reptiles don't have a cut-off growth time like us. 18, we stop growing. Reptiles just keep growing. So Tyrannosaurus lives long, gets huge. Crocodiles get huge. But a baby Tyrannosaurus is very small, right? So no big deal on that. Okay, of course dinosaurs can go in. Don't have to take the old fellows, right? Next one. You know how many types of animals there are? Just cattle alone, that 1,000 species. No, we're not talking about species, we're talking about genus, right? In science, there are families. Canine family, equine family for horses, bovine family for cattle. The genus of the bovine family, the genes in one papa and mama can produce Wagyu beef, dairy cattle, all kinds of cattle, 1,000 species. But Noah didn't bring the species in, he brought the genus, he brought the original, the ones who could produce all kinds of species and subspecies, all right? So basically when you come to genus, like canine, feline, equine, it's not that many. Lastly, how to have enough food. Let me teach you something about science, and I think most of you know. All animals, 99, more, almost all, can hibernate. Hibernation, humans cannot hibernate. After a few hours, you have to get up. 20 hours sleep max. You got to get up and walk. Animals have a ability to tune down their body, slower heart rate, slower breathing, and literally go to sleep and don't eat. Bears don't eat for 100 days, no problem. Snakes don't eat for 1 year, no problem. All animals can hibernate, so don't worry about the food issue. It's a non-issue. So I hope this helps you answer questions that you are going to hear from skeptics.